In case you don't know, we use Anchor to distribute our podcast. We love it because it's free, there are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and more. There's no minimum listenership to start earning money, if that's a goal for your podcast. And everything you need to make a podcast is in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started creating your own podcast. Hi, this is Cheyenne.
And this is Rachel.
Welcome to What the Finance.
We're so glad you're here. So our topic this week is one that I am super excited to talk about because higher education has basically been almost my entire life for well over a decade. We're talking about going to college and paying for college. Just like my own background on it, started out as being active in my student senate, which is also where Cheyenne and I met.
Yay!
I guess we met a little bit before that, but Rachel, we worked together for Upward Bound before you joined the Senate.
Yep, you're right.
But then, I've basically been working in advocacy around higher ed or actually in a community college or university for like my entire adult life. So I've got some opinions on this whole thing.
Yeah. So Rachel said that we met working together on the Student Senate when we were college babies.
Yeah.
And it's really tough to be involved in student government at a college level and to not have some feelings about the cost of college.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, man.
I mean, this is maybe a weird opinion to hold, but we are humans and capable of being complicated. I am really pleased to see in recent years that like high schools especially are moving away from pushing people towards four-year degrees, that there's getting to be a little bit more balance in going to a technical college or starting out at community college before you get a bachelor's degree in gender studies because you didn't know what else to get a bachelor's degree in.
Oh, it's now a bachelor's degree in psychology.
Yes. I think it's fair to say that most bachelor's degrees are basically useless on their own.
I think that I don't know what the solution is to that because it's pretty true. And I mean, I suppose depending on what you want to do, maybe they're not always not super helpful, but I feel like engineering is the only thing I can come up with off the top of my head in which a bachelor's degree actually sets you up for a career in something. Otherwise, it all feels still too general to be.
Yeah, the only other thing that I can think of is accounting.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yep.
But even other, right, management degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Right, if you get a bachelor's degree in business administration, people are going to expect you to get an MBA at some point.
It's almost like we have a broken educational system in the United States.
It's almost exactly like that.
Welcome to the episode where Rachel and Cheyenne receive a lot of hate mail.
But back up your hate with facts, people.
Yeah.
And if you can't, we don't need it.
Yeah.
And actually, now that I'm looking at my notes, like a smart person who went to college, the other four-year degree that can really give you a good return on your investment is in healthcare, right? You can have a whole career in nursing with a 4-year bachelor's of science in nursing.
Here's the thing though, and this is, I don't have a whole lot of knowledge about nursing degrees, but from what I do know, they are very involved. Those people, I feel are fitting in the amount of education that would go into a master's in some other field in that 4-year degree. They really hit it hard. They learn a ton. I have no idea how those people function. If you got a degree in nursing, you just know that you are my hero and a much stronger person than I am.
Yep. And having, in my journey, worked in nursing education, I'm going to give a real strong amen to that one because it's bonkers how much work you do to get a 4-year degree in nursing. And much like a lot of other degrees that require you to get the degree and then a license in the state where you're going to work, you might not even be guaranteed that you're going to work as a nurse if you can't pass the licensing exam. So I I guess it's pretty good that you get a decent return on your investment, because it's a hell of an investment.
Yeah. Gosh, yeah. I know a couple of people I'm friends with on social media who have both recently gone through RN programs, and like, I don't know how they do it. It's wild.
Yes.
Super thankful that people do it though.
Yep. Especially
I really appreciate it. Yeah. As somebody who regularly goes to doctor's appointments and, is thankful that hospitals exist if I ever need one, I really appreciate nurses and doctors. Thank you.
Also, if you are a lab tech and you come and do blood draws and you're nice, I especially appreciate you.
Yeah. The amount of education that people in healthcare settings go through in a short amount of time is just, they're very dedicated people.
Yeah.
Like, you don't do that because you have a passing interest in something.
Pretty much.
I decided to go with a bachelor's degree in psychology because I thought maybe someday I might want to be a psychologist, but mostly because abnormal psych was cool.
Yeah.
Don't pick your degree that way. It's a bad idea.
On a similar, I don't know, it's not a different side of the same coin. Maybe the other half of the same side. If you're gonna get a degree like gender studies, thinking that you're gonna go on to practice law, and then you realize too late to change that, maybe law school really isn't for you, because that's what happened to me. So yeah, for those of you who are lawyers or are thinking about it, you also are amazing, because it's a hard job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You get a lot of flack.
Oh, yes.
That isn't really generally warranted. So while it's good to, have a flexible plan, make sure that it's a reasonably good one before you start it on the plan.
Mm-hmm.
I guess as we're addressing, like, is it actually even worth it to go to college? One thing that really drives me nuts, I don't know if other people's extended families do this, but mine does, is they'll just say, oh, just do a cost-benefit analysis. If the cost, if it's going to cost you more than you're going to earn in your first year, well, then it's not worth it. And I don't really love that either.
Mm-mm.
No. Because I think what you can't, first of all, as it turns out that most of us aren't trained economists.
There is that.
You could do an effective cost-benefit analysis on your own life. It doesn't really account for those times, and I think that maybe a lot of us have had them, where you just, you feel this really strong pull to do a very specific thing, even though it makes no sense at all.
Mm-hmm.
And you think, okay, that makes no sense, I'm going to ignore it. And it keeps coming back and coming back and coming back, and you're like, what the hell?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you've got to pay attention to that.
Absolutely. I think that sometimes, when you're talking about those types of things where you feel like this pull to do something, unfortunately, we have a setup that people who go into working in nonprofits or different areas of healthcare, I think of long-term care type facilities, those types of things, where having, for instance, like a bachelor's degree in psychology could get you a decent job at one of those places, working in some sort of administrative or HR position, or working on a client care side of things in program planning, that kind of stuff. You don't make a lot of money doing it. And people who really love those jobs, they don't go in it for the money. Like, that's not why they're doing it. So if you did like a cost analysis, I don't think that the numbers would say that it would make sense to do, but depending on what you want to do, if that's an area you want to work in.
Yeah.
It is useful. Another thing that I will say, this is something that a family friend of my grandpa's used to say this all the time. They can never take your education away. So even if you don't end up doing the thing that you went to school for or got a degree in, you still have that education, and that will always be beneficial. It's like kids who say, why do I have to learn how to do algebra? I'm never going to use it again. You use it more often than you're going to realize. So having that background will pretty much also always be beneficial in some way.
Exactly. And I don't think I've actually said this out loud yet. I also have a master's degree and in public and nonprofit administration. And one thing that nonprofits do that I think is maybe a little bit more true to like regular people is a social cost benefit analysis. So you kind of look a little bit more broadly, right? Like saying, okay, I feel really strongly about doing program planning in a long-term care facility. And I know that a bachelor's degree in psychology is going to help me be really good at that job. So it also takes into account like your own like mental health well-being, right? Like you're training yourself to do a job that you're reasonably confident at least that you're going to love. And that might it'll add things to your life that are important to you that aren't money.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So think of yourself as a nonprofit instead of as a private. So yeah, so if you do decide going to college is for you, right? You don't want to go into trades or whatever else. How are you going to pay for that? Because even if you have this gut feeling that keeps annoying you with its comeback, you still got to have a loosely cobbled together plan for how you're gonna pony up the money, because it's a lot.
It is. Oh, unfortunately, it is.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Now, and this is something that I do in my day job. And actually, we're recording this, but we're also recording this very shortly after the end of the fall 2020. And I work in student affairs. And so I'm getting a lot of phone calls now for people they've taken a few days to like take a breath and rejoice or not in the grades that they earned this semester. And they're going, okay, spring is coming up. What's going on with the money situation? So I'm talking a lot about this in the day as well as in the night. So I even got like a script memorized that I pretty much just say to everybody, no matter what, do the FAFSA. I don't care if you're a white guy who makes over $100,000 a year and you're trying to go back to school. That is pulled from a real conversation I had recently. Or you have some weird hang up about government help. They already know everything about you anyway. So just do the FAFSA. It's free. It doesn't take that long, really 30 minutes at the most. And if you get free money, well then awesome. You get free money that you don't have to pay back. And most scholarships that you apply for are going to ask for proof that you completed the FAFSA anyway. So then you're saving yourself some time. So there's that piece of it. These, I think, are all linked in our Pinterest board, but there's a few websites that I have found to be pretty helpful if you're looking for scholarships. FastWeb is pretty good. They have a lot of ads, which is annoying.
Yeah.
But if you can wade through the ads, there's some actual gold there in the coal. The U.S. Department of Labor also has a scholarship webpage. And then your school usually has a foundation that has their own scholarships. So keep an eye on that. And also, for the love of God, just check your student email, because your school will usually send an email out when scholarship applications open up.
Also, ask your advisor if they know of anybody who is doing the job that you are going to school for. Ask them if they know of any. And if you live in a community that has a community foundation, reach out to them. A lot of those community foundations also have scholarships. Now, most of those will be listed on like a scholarship board local to your area, but not always.
Yep. And actually, I was listening to a podcast earlier today about negotiation, and I picked up this little nugget that I thought was pretty cool. And most of my experience, actually all of my experience, is with state schools. So like the whole world of private education is completely foreign to me. But evidently, most private schools will offer you like a scholarship package. You know, if you go to like a religious school, there are some other like private schools that aren't religiously affiliated, but turns out you can usually negotiate that scholarship package. You just reach out to your school and say, thank you so much for these scholarships. Is there any wiggle room in your scholarship budget? Often they will say yes.
Well, today I learned.
Yeah, me too. And that, obviously not our podcast. I will also link to that podcast episode in our Pinterest board. So if you want to listen to it much more in a much more clear fashion than what I just described, I would encourage you to do so.
Also, depending on where you work, especially if you work for a larger private organization, if you already work there and you're going to school for something that is going to benefit them, most places will already advertise if they have scholarships or professional development money available. But again, sometimes they don't. It just kind of depends on what type of organization they are. It just ask your HR department if they have any money available for that. Sometimes it's $500, but it could be more depending on what you're going for, especially if that's an in-demand degree or skill. Mm-hmm. They may be willing to pay for more because they need it.
And I would say if you work for a smaller organization too, like a small nonprofit, don't think to yourself, oh no, there's definitely not money there. Ask anyway. I know somebody, and this somebody was somebody that I signed the checks for. So I really know somebody who went to law school, and she got a scholarship outside of the organization that covered part of her costs. The nonprofit that I worked for paid the rest of her costs. And that was in addition to her regular compensation package, or like take home pay. So really every time, just ask. The worst they can say is no.
Right.
Then you know.
Right.
Right. You're not just saying, oh no, I don't want to be a burden and I don't want to ask. No, if you going back to school, if you decide to do it, will add value to your company.
And that's, I mean, we're talking a lot about college because that was the main focus of this, but I don't know that we'll ever specifically do an episode on professional development. So it's worth just, I think, throwing in on this one. If you're looking at just some sort of professional development course for continuing education credits, or just because you feel like it's something that's going to be useful, I think a lot of like the LinkedIn courses that exist. There's another one that I can't think of, but the cost of those tend to be only around like sometimes as low as like $30 up to, I think the most expensive I've ever seen them on like LinkedIn is like $50, I want to say. They're not super expensive. Most places have professional development funds set aside. So the worst they're going to say is no, but more often, if it applies to what you're doing and can add value, they're going to be willing to spend the money.
Yeah. Eventually we're going to do an episode on negotiation, like actual salary negotiation. But until then on, we'll say if you're starting a new job, you should negotiate your salary, and you can and should negotiate professional development into your compensation package.
I remember being at the beginning of my career and thinking, cool, never going to have to go to school again. This is great. And wow, was I super wrong. I attended so many conferences because no matter what you work in, things are always changing. So you always have to be learning more about whatever it is that you are doing. And the place you work knows that things change. So they want you to continue learning. They don't expect any one person to know everything at the moment of hire and think that they are never going to have to learn anything for the rest of their career. That nowhere works under that assumption.
And if you are at a company that's the odd man out, that's not a company you want to work for anyway.
Not so much.
As far as paying, the other thing that I wanted to mention are loans. They're no big deal, 100%. If you can avoid loans, you should. I always end up talking to a lot of people who don't think that loans from the federal government are financial aid because you have to pay them back. So I will just set the record straight on this podcast. They are. It's part of the financial aid umbrella. And if you don't think that it is, I would ask you, have you ever tried to take out a loan before? And if you have, think about how difficult that was compared to how easy it is to borrow money from the feds when they want to lend it to you. And then reassess.
Mm-hmm.
And generally, I would advise caution. But if you're going into a field that has loan forgiveness programs, you maybe don't need to be as cautious as your less well-situated peers. Right? And I'm thinking about, we were just talking about nonprofits.
Mm-hmm.
This program has, as I've seen, limited success, but the federal government does have a loan forgiveness program for people who work for the government or in nonprofits. So that is nice. The other field that has a lot in the way of loan forgiveness is healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
If you're really any kind of a healthcare practitioner and you're working in an underserved area, the state that you're working in will almost certainly forgive your or like pay off your loans after like a certain length of service.
Mm-hmm.
In Minnesota, it's not. I think like for nursing, like if you're a nurse practitioner and you're working, in like a rural area or like a reservation, it's only like 3 years. Or if if dental is more your thing, it's I think the same deal, like 3 to 5 years as a hygienist, or there's another type of practitioner that's not a hygienist, and I can't remember what it's called. And I apologize because I know that people get really defensive about it.
Some slack. It's late. It might not be late to you, but it's late to us.
It is. It is. And also when you're the person who's going to the dentist, they're both the people that are cleaning your teeth. You don't always think about their title when they're scraping away your teeth. But yeah, same with, there aren't many of these in the country, but advanced dental therapists, which is like a nurse practitioner for your teeth, orthodontists,
Mm-hmm.
regular dentists, like any of those, if you're working in an underserved community, it's the same deal. So, and yeah, nurse anesthetists, they have to take on a ton of debt
Mm-hmm.
to pay for school unless they're super lucky.
There are
loan forgiveness. Look into it.
And I think there's more loan forgiveness than people are aware of. And maybe it's just that I know people who work in fields where loan forgiveness is more of a thing. Maybe that's it, but I guess it's more common than I thought it was. Check into it.
Another thing that I've noticed that's gaining some traction is actually negotiating your student loan payments as part of like your compensation package when you get a new job.
Mm-hmm.
So even if it's not, if you're working in the private sector and you think, oh, okay, well, I'm just working for US Bank because I'll make bank. And and then I'll pay my student loans on my own. I'm a $1 trillion company. Ask them for your help to pay your student loans.
Because again, it's beneficial for them for you to have that education. So
yeah. And it's also beneficial for them if you're not stressed out about how you're going to make your student loan payment because you're more focused on the job.
And thankfully, there are people who went to school to learn things like that too.
Yes.
Sorry, I know I made a lot of chair noise there. I had to adjust. My back was starting to hurt.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I get it. I think as an ending thought for me, this may seem as a really stupid ending thought, but based on my day job, I'm going to tell you that there's some weight to it. If you decide that you're going to go to school, you either get your first degree, finish a degree, go back for another one, whatever it is, make this plan to pay before you actually apply. Because what I see happen a lot is that people will apply and then they'll start getting emails like, hey, you register for these classes, this is what you owe. and then you go, oh no, what am I gonna do? Just save yourself the hassle. Figure out what you're gonna do before you apply. You will save yourself a lot of stress.
Definitely. I feel like really all I have for ending thoughts are just make sure that you fill out your FAFSA, search for scholarships, reach out for information on scholarships that are available. So if you are just starting college, networking is important still. It's finding people who are doing the thing that you want to do, asking your advisor, those types of things. If you're already in your career and you're looking to advance it, same thing, networking, asking people. I have yet to come across anybody who hoards that information. They're more than willing to share because they wish that they had known it sooner.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't know that that's what you're doing, they're not just going to like randomly tell you in conversation. But if you bring it up and you ask, people are more than willing to share.
And if you do have those people in your life that will just randomly bring it up, like, oh, you're going back to school? Well, here's this thing that I wish that I knew. Appreciate those people.
Mm-hmm,
because most of us, despite our best efforts, are a little bit thoughtless. You might not bring it up even if we're not opposed.
True. I would also say, so the last piece that I would add then is, asking people, but also that professional development piece, making sure that you're continuing to do that as you progress through your career and recognizing that most of the places that you're going to end up working will have some sort of a budget for that already and want to spend that money. They don't just want the money to sit there. They want people to use it. So do that. And also, depending on what type of skill you're trying to build, you might be able to find a professional development course that's free. That'll give you some knowledge. It might not necessarily give you like a certification or something, but it'll help you build the skill.
Thank you for listening to this episode of What the Finance. You can subscribe everywhere you get your podcast so you never miss an episode.
You can also email us at what_the_finance@protonmail.com. Visit us on Facebook at What the Finance. Follow us on Instagram at What the Finance. Check us out on Pinterest at What the Finance, or tweet us at finance_what.